He looked right through her every single day. To Daniel Moretti, the most ruthless capo in New York, Emilia was just part of the furniture, a quiet shadow in a grey cardigan who organized his files and poured his whiskey. She was the ghost in his machine, invisible and untouched. But in the Mafia underworld, nothing stays hidden forever. When a rival boss decides to use the shy archivist as a pawn to provoke Daniel, the dynamic shifts in a heartbeat. Suddenly, the man who couldn't even remember her name is burning down the city just to see who dared to touch her. This isn't a fairy tale, it's a war. Welcome to She Was Invisible to the Mafia boss, until his jealousy made him lose control. Buckle up. The library of the Moretti estate was less a place for reading and more a graveyard of secrets. It smelled of old paper, lemon polish, and the metallic tang of gun oil that seemed to cling to every man who walked through the heavy oak doors. Emilia Vance adjusted her glasses, her fingers trembling slightly as she catalogued the new stack of ledgers. She was 24, clad in a shapeless grey wool sweater and a skirt that fell below her knees. She had worked for the Moretti crime family for 3 years as their archivist and forensic accountant, yet she doubted the Don himself knew she existed. To the guards, she was the mouse. To the capos, she was a piece of office equipment. To Daniel Moretti, she was simply invisible. The double door swung open, slamming against the mahogany paneling. The storm outside lashed against the floor-to-ceiling windows, but the atmosphere inside the room was infinitely more volatile. Daniel Moretti strode in, bringing the cold air with him. He was a man carved from marble and violence, 6'3", wearing a bespoke charcoal suit that cost more than Emilia's entire college tuition. His dark hair was slicked back, a few loose strands falling over eyes that were the color of frozen espresso. He didn't look at the corner desk where Emilia sat, frozen. He never did. "I don't care what the Russians are offering," Daniel snarled, throwing a leather satchel onto the central conference table. "The docks in Jersey are mine. If Volkov sends another ship into my waters, I'll sink it with the crew inside." Trailing behind him were his underboss, Silas, and his consigliere, Marcus. They looked exhausted. "Daniel," Marcus said, his voice reasoning but weary. "Volkov has the backing of the Triad now. We are stretched thin. If we go to war over the Jersey port, we leave the Manhattan casinos vulnerable." "I am not negotiating with a man who sold fentanyl to my captain's children," Daniel said, his voice dropping to a lethal whisper. He walked over to the wet bar, just 3 feet from Emilia's desk. Emilia stopped breathing. This was the ritual. He would pour a drink. He would stare out the window. He would ignore her. But today, the crystal decanter was empty. Daniel paused, his hand hovering over the glass. A muscle feathered in his jaw. The tension in the room spiked. In the Moretti household, empty decanters were usually a firing offense, sometimes literally. Without a sound, Emilia stood up. She moved with the silent efficiency that was her trademark. She reached under her desk, pulled out a reserve bottle of 25-year-old Macallan, and stepped forward. She didn't speak. She simply uncorked the bottle and poured 2 fingers of amber liquid into his glass. Daniel turned. For the first time in 3 years, his eyes actually landed on her. He didn't look at her. He looked at the hand pouring the drink. Then his gaze traveled up her arm, past the grey wool, to her face. He looked bored, dismissive. "Ice!" he commanded, his voice rough. "The machine is broken, sir," Emilia whispered. Her voice was raspy from lack of use. "I have chilled stones in the freezer." She produced a small velvet bag, used tongs to place 2 granite cubes in the whiskey, and retreated to her desk instantly. Daniel took a sip, turning his back on her immediately. "Silas, get the car. We have a meeting at the Onyx Club. Julian Thorne is in town, and I want to know why." Amelia's heart hammered against her ribs. Julian Thorne. The name sent a shiver through the underground. He was the head of the Thorne Syndicate, a charming sociopath from London who had been trying to carve a slice of New York for years. "Thorne is a snake," Marcus warned. "Snakes are easy to kill once you cut off the head," Daniel muttered. He downed the drink and slammed the glass on the coaster Amelia had just placed there. As they turned to leave, Silas, the brutish underboss, smirked at Amelia. "Hey, Mouse, make sure the trash is taken out tonight. It smells like old books in here." Amelia stared at her ledger, her face burning. "Yes, sir." Daniel paused at the door. He didn't turn around, but he spoke to Silas. "Stop playing with the help, Silas. Focus." The help? That's all she was. Not the woman who had laundered $40 million for him last month without leaving a single paper trail. Not the woman who had found the discrepancy in the shipping logs that saved him from a federal indictment. Just the help. Amelia watched the heavy doors close. She let out a shaky breath, unaware that her invisibility was about to be stripped away in the most violent way possible. 2 days later, the Moretti estate was transformed. The grim atmosphere of the war room was replaced by the superficial glitz of the annual autumn gala. It was a mandatory event for the families of the 5 Points, a night where blood enemies drank champagne and pretended they weren't plotting each other's murders. Amelia was not supposed to be there as a guest. She was working. Dressed in a severe black dress with a high collar, intended to make her look like staff, she was stationed in the upper gallery of the ballroom. Her job was to monitor the security feeds on her tablet and cross-reference the guest list for any uninvited associates. From the balcony, she watched Daniel. He was breathtaking. He moved through the crowd like a shark in a koi pond. Women in red silk and diamonds threw themselves into his orbit, touching his arm, laughing too loudly at things he didn't say. He remained stoic, his eyes scanning the room for threats. "Enjoying the view?" The voice was like velvet dragged over gravel. Amelia jumped, nearly dropping her tablet. She spun around to find a man standing in the shadows of the gallery. He was lean, wearing a tuxedo that fit a little too well, with sandy blonde hair and a smile that didn't reach his predatory blue eyes. Julian Thorne. Amelia stepped back, clutching the tablet to her chest. "Mr. Thorne, this area is restricted." "Restricted," Julian repeated, tasting the word. He stepped closer, invading her personal space. He smelled of expensive cologne and peppermint. "I've always liked restricted things. They're usually the most valuable." I need to call security," Amelia stammered, looking toward the staircase. "Relax, darling. I'm just getting some air." Julian looked her up and down. His gaze didn't slide over her like Daniel's did. It stuck. It analyzed. He saw the intelligence behind the glasses, the fear, and something else. Her value. "You're the archivist, aren't you? The one who cleaned up the mess with the Venetian accounts?" Amelia went cold. That was highly classified information. Only Daniel and Marcus knew she was the one who fixed the Venetian laundering scheme. "I don't know what you're talking about. I just file papers." Julian laughed, a low, dark sound. He reached out and tucked a stray lock of hair behind her ear. His fingers lingered on her neck, cold and presumptive. "You're a terrible liar. Daniel keeps you hidden away in that library like a dirty little secret. Does he even know what you can do? Does he know he has a genius counting his coins?" "Please don't touch me," Amelia whispered, stepping back until her back hit the marble railing. "I could offer you a better life, Amelia," Julian said softly, using her name. "London is beautiful in the fall. You wouldn't be a ghost there. You'd be a queen." Suddenly, The air in the gallery changed. The temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Step away from her, Thorne." The voice came from the stairs. It was low, calm, and terrified Amelia more than Julian's threats. Daniel Moretti stood at the top of the landing. He wasn't looking at Julian. He was staring at Julian's hand, which was still hovering near Amelia's neck. Daniel's hands were in his pockets, but his posture was coiled, ready to strike. Julian smiled slowly and dropped his hand. "Daniel, I was just introducing myself to your charming staff. I didn't catch her title. Is she a secretary? A maid?" Daniel walked forward. His strides were measured. He stopped between Amelia and Julian, effectively shielding her with his massive frame. For the first time, Amelia felt the heat radiating off him. "She is none of your concern," Daniel said. "And if you ever corner one of my employees again, I will cut off the hand you use to touch them." Julian chuckled, raising his hands in mock surrender. "Touchy, touchy. You treat her like a piece of furniture, Daniel. I just thought I'd dust her off. Shame to waste such talent." Julian winked at Amelia over Daniel's shoulder, a gesture that made her stomach turn, and sauntered past Daniel toward the stairs. "See you on the floor, Moretti. Try not to look so jealous. It's bad for business." When Julian was gone, silence descended on the gallery. Amelia was trembling. She stared at Daniel's back, waiting for him to yell at her for being discovered, or for speaking to the enemy. Daniel turned around slowly. His eyes were blazing. It wasn't the bored look from the library. It was dark, confused, and angry. He looked at her neck where Julian had touched her, then up to her eyes. "What did he say to you?" Daniel demanded. He knew about the Venetian accounts, sir," Amelia said, her voice shaking. Daniel's eyes narrowed. "He shouldn't know you exist." "I know, sir. I stayed in the shadows, just like you said." Daniel took a step closer. He was so close she could smell the whiskey on his breath, the Macallan she had poured. He looked at her, really looked at her, scanning her face as if trying to solve a puzzle he had ignored for years. He seemed annoyed by her presence, yet furious that someone else had noticed her. "Why are you wearing that?" he asked abruptly, gesturing to her high-collared dress. It's my uniform, sir." "It's hideous," he snapped. He reached out, his hand hovering near her face, mirroring Julian's gesture. But he stopped himself. He pulled his hand back into a fist. "Go to my office. Stay there until the gala is over. Do not speak to anyone, especially not Thorne." "Yes, sir." "And Amelia?" She paused, heart stopping. He had used her name. He knew her name. "Sir?" "If he comes near you again," Daniel said, his voice dropping to a growl that vibrated in her chest, "you scream. You don't negotiate. You scream, and I will handle it." He turned and stormed back down the stairs, leaving Amelia breathless against the railing. He had noticed her, but it wasn't affection. It was territory. She was his lamp, his chair, his calculator, and someone else had tried to steal her. But for Amelia, who had loved him in silence for 3 years, that small spark of possessiveness was enough to start a fire that would burn them both alive. The following morning, the dynamics of the Moretti household had shifted, though no one said a word. When Amelia arrived at the library at 7 a.m., her usual desk was gone. In its place was a team of movers. "Excuse me?" she asked, clutching her bag. "What's happening?" Silas, the underboss, walked in, chewing on a toothpick. He looked annoyed. "Boss's orders. You're being moved." "Fired?" Her heart plummeted. "Moved," Silas grunted. "Top floor, connecting office to Daniel's suite." Amelia blinked. I don't understand. My archives are down here." "Daniel wants you where he can see you," Silas said, giving her a suspicious look. He thinks there's a leak. Thorne, knowing about the Venetian accounts, spooked him. He wants to keep an eye on you to make sure you aren't the rat. The joy she had felt the night before evaporated. He didn't move her because he cared. He moved her because he suspected her. He was keeping his enemies close, and apparently, she was now a potential enemy. Emilia was escorted to the top floor. The office was sleek, modern, and terrifyingly open. A glass wall separated her workspace from Daniel's massive private office. He could see her every move. When Daniel arrived an hour later, he didn't say good morning. He walked into his office, sat at his desk, and hit the intercom button. Coffee. Black. And bring the files on the Jersey acquisition. Emilia made the coffee, her hands shaking, and entered his office. She placed the cup down. "Sit," Daniel commanded, not looking up from his paperwork. She sat in the leather chair opposite him. "Thorne sent a gift this morning," Daniel said, sliding a small velvet box across the desk. Emilia hesitated, then opened it. Inside was a diamond bracelet. It was delicate, expensive, and clearly a bribe. "I didn't ask for this," she said quickly, snapping the box shut. "I'll return it." "No," Daniel said. He finally looked up. His eyes were bloodshot, as if he hadn't slept. "You will keep it. You will write him a thank you note." "What?" Emilia was horrified. "Sir, I am loyal to this family. I don't want his—" "You will write the note," Daniel interrupted, his voice sharp, "because Thorne thinks he can turn you. If he thinks you're open to his advances, he will get sloppy. He will reveal his hand. You are going to be the bait, Emilia." Emilia felt like she had been slapped. "Bait? You want me to flirt with him?" "I want you to exist," Daniel said coldly. "For 3 years you've been invisible. Now, I need you to be visible. I need Thorne to look at you so he doesn't see the knife I'm putting in his ribs." "And what happens if he bites?" Emilia asked, her voice trembling with a rare defiance. "What happens if he decides he wants to take the bait home?" Daniel stood up. He walked around the desk, leaning against the edge so he towered over her. "Then I kill him," Daniel said simply. "But until then, you do as you are told. You are mine to use, Emilia. Do not forget that." He was trying to be cruel. He was trying to establish dominance. But Emilia saw the way his eyes tracked the pulse in her neck. He was angry, not at her, but at the situation. He hated using her. But he was a king, and kings sacrificed pawns. "I understand, sir," she whispered. "Good. Now get back to work. And Emilia?" "Yes?" "Burn the bracelet," he muttered, turning back to the window. "I'll buy you a better one. I don't want his trash on your wrist." 3 weeks in the glass office had frayed Emilia's nerves to the breaking point. Being invisible had been lonely, but being visible to Daniel Moretti was exhausting. He watched her, constantly. He would be in the middle of a high-stakes negotiation with union leaders, his voice a low rumble of threats, but his eyes would drift through the glass partition to where she sat reconciling Cayman Island bank statements. If she shifted in her seat, his gaze snapped to her. If she got up for water, his eyes tracked her across the room. It wasn't the gaze of a lover. It was the gaze of a prison warden. He criticized everything. Her coffee was too cold. Her typing was too loud. The way she organized the files was inefficient, even though she had tripled the speed of his laundering operations. He was picking fights, looking for reasons to interact with her, even if the interactions were hostile. Then came the invitation. It arrived via courier, a platinum card inviting Emilia Vance to a private dinner at Les Bernardins with Julian Thorne to discuss career opportunities. Daniel was holding the card between 2 fingers as if it were contaminated waste when Emilia entered his office. "He bit," Daniel said, his voice flat. Amelia felt sick. Do I have to go? You do. Tonight. You'll wear something nice. Not that grey sack you usually wear. He tossed a credit card onto the desk. Buy a dress. Something that says you're expensive and unsatisfied with your current management. Sir, I don't know how to lie to men like Thorne, Amelia argued, her hands clasping together. He'll see right through me. Daniel stood up and walked around the desk. He stopped inches from her. The scent of his sandalwood and leather cologne filled her senses. He reached out, and for a terrifying second, she thought he was going to caress her cheek. Instead, his thumb traced the line of her jaw, hard and possessive. You don't have to lie, Amelia, Daniel murmured, his voice dropping. You just have to tell him the truth. Tell him I'm a demanding bastard. Tell him I don't appreciate you. Tell him I keep you locked in a glass cage. His dark eyes bore into hers. It's all true, isn't it? Her breath hitched. Yes, sir. His thumb pressed harder against her jawbone. Good. Make him believe you hate me. And Amelia, you'll be wearing a wire. Marcus and I will be in a van outside. If he tries to take you anywhere else, we move in. He released her abruptly and turned away. Get out of here. Go shopping. And don't mess this up. That evening, Amelia walked into the Michelin-starred restaurant, wearing armor disguised as a dress. It was emerald green silk, tailored to cling to every curve she usually hid under wool. The neckline plunged just enough to be distracting. Julian Thorne was waiting at a corner table. When he saw her, he stood, genuine appreciation crossing his predatory features. Amelia, he said, taking her hand and kissing the knuckles. You look stunning. Daniel truly is a fool to keep you hidden in dusty libraries. He doesn't keep me in the library anymore, Amelia said, sliding into the chair. He keeps me in a fishbowl next to his office, so he can micromanage every breath I take. In the surveillance van parked down the street, Daniel adjusted the volume on his headset. He heard Thorne's low chuckle. Sounding convincing, Mouse, Marcus muttered from the driver's seat. Daniel didn't reply. His jaw was clenched so tightly his teeth ached. He hated the sound of Thorne's voice saying her name. He hated that another man was looking at her in that dress, a dress he paid for. Throughout dinner, Amelia played her role perfectly. She complained about Daniel's temper, his impossible standards, the lack of respect. She was intelligent, bitter, and vulnerable, exactly what Thorne wanted. He doesn't see people, Julian, Amelia said, sipping her wine. He just sees assets and liabilities. I see you, Amelia, Thorne murmured, leaning closer across the table. I see a brilliant woman who is wasting her life serving a man who would trade her for a shipping container of guns. Daniel slammed his fist against the metal wall of the van. Marcus jumped. Easy, boss, Marcus warned. He's just playing the game. She's doing good. He's too close. Daniel snarled into the mic, though only Marcus could hear him. Back in the restaurant, Thorne reached out and covered Amelia's hand with his own. His thumb stroked her skin softly. Come work for me in London, Thorne whispered. I'll give you your own division. You'll name your price, and I promise you, I will never look right through you. Amelia's heart pounded against the tiny microphone, taped between her breasts. Thorne was charismatic. If she didn't love Daniel with a pathetic, hopeless devotion, she might have been tempted. I don't know, Julian. It's a big risk. Daniel doesn't let people leave. Daniel is losing his grip. He's obsessed with this Jersey port war. He's distracted. Now is the time to move. Thorne squeezed her hand. Let me take you away from here. Tonight. Come back to my hotel. We can finalize the details. In the van, Daniel ripped the headset off. That's it. Get her out. Now. Daniel, wait, Marcus argued. He's about to spill something about Jersey. Let her push a little more." He asked her to his hotel. Daniel roared, his eyes feral. "The operation is over. Send in the extraction team." Marcus sighed and radioed the 2 guards posing as patrons in the restaurant. Inside, Amelia was trying to gently extract her hand from Thorne's grip when 2 large men in suits materialized at their table. "Miss Vance," one said firmly, "Mr. Moretti requires your presence immediately. There's been an emergency at the office." Thorne's smile didn't waver, but his blue eyes turned icy. He didn't let go of Amelia's hand. "Rude," Thorne drawled. "We hadn't even ordered dessert. Tell Daniel his timing is atrocious." "Now, Miss Vance," the guard repeated, placing a hand on his holstered weapon. Thorne released her slowly. He winked at Amelia. "Think about my offer, darling. The cage door is open. You just have to fly." Amelia was hurried out of the restaurant and into the back of Daniel's waiting black SUV. The door slammed shut, sealing her in the darkness with him. The atmosphere inside the car was suffocating. Daniel was radiating a fury so palpable it felt like heat against her skin. He didn't speak until the car was moving. Then he turned on her, his eyes glittering in the passing streetlights. "Did you enjoy that?" he accused, his voice laced with venom. "Did you enjoy letting that snake paw at you?" Amelia was flooded with adrenaline and indignation. "I did exactly what you told me to do. I was bait. You enjoyed it too much," Daniel spat. He grabbed her wrist, the one Thorne had held, his grip bruising. He pulled her close until their noses were almost touching. "You liked him looking at you in that dress. You liked him offering to save you from the big bad wolf." "You are the big bad wolf, Daniel," Amelia yelled back, the months of tension finally snapping. "You treat me like garbage. You ignore me for 3 years, then you use me as a human shield, and now you're mad because I did a good job? You can't have it both ways. You can't ignore me and own me at the same time." Daniel stared at her, stunned by her outburst. The mouse had roared. His eyes dropped to her lips, then back to her eyes. The anger in his gaze shifted into something darker, hungrier. "You think I don't see you?" he whispered harshly. "Every night for 3 years, Amelia. Every single night I watched you walk out of that library. I knew exactly where you were." Amelia froze. "What?" "I ignored you because you were the only clean thing in my life," he confessed, the words torn from him. "Because if I looked at you, really looked at you, I knew I'd want to touch you. And everything I touch gets destroyed. Like this." Before she could process his words, his mouth crashed onto hers. It wasn't a gentle, romantic kiss. It was a collision. It was 3 years of repressed longing, jealousy, and violence pouring out of him. His hands tangled in her hair, pulling her closer, devouring her. Amelia should have pushed him away. He was using her again, just in a different way. But she couldn't. She melted into him, her hands clutching the lapels of his suit, kissing him back with equal desperation. The car swerved slightly, but neither of them noticed. For those few minutes in the back of the SUV, the war with Thorne, the Mafia, the rules, none of it existed. There was only the fire between them, finally allowed to burn. They were breathless when he finally pulled back, resting his forehead against hers. His breathing was ragged. "You are mine," Daniel growled against her skin. "Thorne will die for having touched your hand. Do you understand? You are mine." Amelia, dizzy and thoroughly compromised, could only nod. "Yes, Daniel." They didn't see the sedan tailing them. They didn't see the man in the passenger seat speak into a radio, confirming that the target was acquired and that Daniel Moretti was officially distracted. The next morning, The air in the penthouse office was thick enough to choke on. They hadn't spoken since the car ride. Daniel had escorted her to her apartment door, kissed her again, hard and brief, and left with a perimeter of guards stationed outside her building. Now, back in the glass fishbowl, Amelia couldn't focus on the numbers. Every time she looked up, Daniel was looking at her from his desk. His gaze was no longer warden-like. It was scorching. It held promises of things that had nothing to do with business. He buzzed her intercom. "Come in here." Amelia smoothed her grey skirt, she had reverted to her armour, and entered his office. Daniel stood when she entered. He walked over and locked the door behind her. The click was loud in the silent room. "We need to talk about last night," he started, leaning against his desk, crossing his arms. He looked uncomfortable, a man unused to discussing feelings. "Sir, it was a mistake. Adrenaline. It won't happen again," Amelia said, quickly, trying to restore the professional boundaries. Daniel's eyes narrowed. "Don't lie to me, Amelia. It wasn't a mistake, and it will happen again. But right now, we have a problem." He tossed a tablet onto the desk. It displayed a series of surveillance photos taken the previous night. They showed Amelia entering Le Bernardin. They showed Thorne holding her hand. "Thorne didn't buy your act," Daniel said grimly. "We listened to the tapes again this morning. Marcus picked up something we missed in the heat of the moment." He pressed play on an audio file. Thorne's voice, slightly distorted. "Daniel is losing his grip. He's distracted." A rustling sound, then Thorne's voice, barely a whisper, much closer to the mic than before. "He's listening right now, isn't he, darling? Tell him I said hello. Tell him he should have kept his eye on the ball instead of the girl." Amelia went cold. "He knew I was wearing a wire." "He knew the whole time," Daniel said, furious with himself. "He was playing us. The dinner wasn't to recruit you. It was to confirm how much you matter to me. My reaction, pulling you out like that, confirmed it." I showed my hand. "So, I'm not bait anymore?" "No." Daniel walked over to her, placing his hands on her shoulders. His grip was tight, desperate. "Now you're a target, the primary target. If Thorne wants to hurt me, he knows you're the way to do it." He looked deep into her eyes. "I have to send you away, to the safe house in Sicily, tonight. You'll stay there until I put Thorne in the ground." Amelia felt a pang of despair. Just as she was finally seen, she was being sent away again. "Daniel, no, I can help here. I know his accounts now, I can—" "You will go," he ordered, his voice leaving no room for argument. "Silas will take you to the private airfield in 1 hour. Pack nothing. We have everything there." He leaned down and kissed her. This time it was gentle, almost apologetic. "Please, Amelia, don't fight me on this. I cannot fight a war if I'm terrified you're going to be caught in the crossfire. Go be invisible for a little longer. For me." Tears pricked her eyes. She nodded against his chest. "Okay." 1 hour later, Amelia was sitting in the back of an armoured sedan next to Silas. The massive underboss was silent, cleaning his fingernails with a combat knife. They were on the highway heading out of the city toward the private airstrip. The convoy consisted of 3 cars. They were in the middle. "He really likes you, huh?" Silas grunted suddenly. "Never seen the boss act so stupid over a skirt. Blowing an operation just because Thorne held your hand. Amateur hour." "I didn't ask for any of this, Silas," Amelia said, quietly, looking out the window at the grey industrial landscape. "Doesn't matter what you asked for. You're Moretti property now, and that makes you valuable." Suddenly, the lead car in the convoy exploded. The blast shook their sedan violently, throwing Amelia against the door. Silas was screaming orders into his radio before the car even stopped skidding. "Ambush! Vipers at 3 o'clock. Defensive formation." Heavy gunfire erupted around them. Bullets pinged off the armored glass of their car. "Stay down!" Silas pushed Emilia onto the floor arrangement of the car. He kicked open his door, assault rifle raised, and began firing into the smoke. Emilia curled into a ball, hands over her ears. The noise was deafening. Screams, automatic weapon fire, the roar of engines. She felt the car rock as someone jumped onto the hood. The windshield shattered, despite the armor plating, under the repeated blows of a sledgehammer. A canister was dropped inside the car. Smoke hissed out. Sweet, cloying white smoke. Emilia coughed, trying to scramble away, but there was nowhere to go. Her vision blurred instantly. Her limbs felt like lead. Through the haze, she saw Silas fall back against the car door, blood blooming on his shoulder. He was still firing, but he was losing. The rear door of her side was ripped open. She looked up, fighting the darkness encroaching on her mind. Julian Thorne stood there. He wasn't wearing a tuxedo today. He was in tactical gear, holding a gas mask to his face. His chilling blue eyes smiled down at her. "Hello again, darling." His voice sounded warped through the mask. "Did you really think Daniel could hide you from me? I told you, I like restricted things." Emilia tried to scream for Daniel, but only a pathetic whimper came out. Thorne reached in, grabbed her by the back of her grey wool sweater, and dragged her out of the car like a sack of laundry. The last thing she saw before the darkness took her completely was Silas lying on the asphalt, and Thorne's boot coming down hard on the underboss's face. "Tell Daniel," Thorne shouted over the gunfire to the fallen man, "that if he wants his little ghost back, he's going to have to burn the city down to find her." Daniel Moretti did not scream when he saw the burning wreckage on the I-95 on-ramp. He did not cry out when he saw the body of his driver draped over the steering wheel, or Silas wheezing on the asphalt, blood bubbling from a punctured lung. Daniel stood in the middle of the highway, surrounded by police sirens and the smell of burning rubber, and went completely, terrifyingly still. Marcus ran up to him, phone pressed to his ear. "Boss, the cops are trying to clear the scene. We need to go. Thorne took her." Witnesses saw a van heading east toward the port. Daniel looked at Marcus. His eyes were void of humanity. They were two black holes absorbing all light. "Get Silas to the private surgeon," Daniel said. His voice was a monotone drone, devoid of inflection. "Then call everyone, the capos, the soldiers, the street runners, everyone." "Daniel," Marcus said, gripping his arm, "if we mobilize everyone, the feds will come down on us hard. We'll expose the whole operation." Daniel turned to his consigliere. "You think I care about the operation, Marcus? You think I care about the money, the ports, the legacy?" He walked toward his own car, unholstering his custom Beretta 92 FS to check the chamber. "Burn it all," Daniel said. "Shut down the bridges, block the tunnels. No one leaves Manhattan. If a rat scampers across the street, I want to know about it. I want Thorne found, and I want him to know that he has opened the gates of hell." 6 hours later. Emilia woke up to the smell of brine and rust. Her head throbbed with a rhythm that matched the crashing of waves against metal. She was tied to a wooden chair in what looked like the belly of a derelict ship. The room was rusted, illuminated by a single hanging bulb that swayed with the gentle rocking of the vessel. Awake at last. Julian Thorne sat on a crate across from her, peeling an apple with a small silver knife. He looked relaxed, as if they were back at the restaurant. "Where am I?" Emilia croaked. Her throat felt like sandpaper. "Not in Sicily, that's for sure." Thorne smiled, slicing a piece of apple and popping it into his mouth. "You're on the Lady Vengeance, an old cargo ship scheduled for scrap. It's fitting, isn't it? Daniel loves his shipping containers so much, I thought I'd let him find his precious treasure inside one. He will come for me, Amelia said. She was surprised by the steadiness of her own voice. Oh, I'm counting on it. Thorne stood up, the knife glinting in the dim light. He walked over to her, circling the chair. I want him to come. I want him to see you. And then I want him to watch while I take everything he loves away from him. He took my territory. He took my reputation. Now I take his heart. He trailed the cold flat of the blade down her cheek. Amelia flinched but didn't look away. You think I'm his heart? Amelia asked, a spark of defiance igniting in her chest. You're wrong, Julian. I'm just his employee. He's possessive, yes. But he doesn't love anything but power. Thorne laughed. You poor, naive girl. I saw the footage from the car. I saw how he kissed you. Men like Daniel Moretti don't kiss employees like that. He's obsessed with you. And that obsession makes him weak. It makes him predictable. Suddenly, a loud boom echoed through the hull of the ship. The metal groaned. Thorne paused, looking up. Another boom. Closer. The sound of heavy-caliber gunfire erupted from the deck above. Right on time, Thorne smirked. He grabbed Amelia's hair, yanking her head back. Time for the show, darling. Daniel Moretti was not fighting like a don. He was fighting like a soldier. He had bypassed the stealth approach. He had bypassed negotiation. He had simply driven a reinforced Humvee through the dockyard gates, crashed it into the gangplank of the ship, and stormed the deck with 20 of his most lethal enforcers. It was a massacre. Thorne's men were mercenaries, paid killers. Daniel's men were family. They fought with a ferocity that money couldn't buy. Daniel moved through the chaos like a wraith. He shot a man on the bridge, threw another over the railing, and didn't stop moving. His expensive suit was ruined, stained with grease and blood that wasn't his. Clear! Marcus shouted from the bow. They're retreating to the hold. They aren't retreating, Daniel growled, reloading his weapon. He's luring us down. It's a trap, Daniel. I know, Daniel said. He looked at the dark, gaping maw of the cargo hold stairs. Stay here. Hold the deck. If anyone tries to come up who isn't me or Amelia, kill them. You can't go down there alone. Daniel turned to Marcus. His face was a mask of cold fury. He has my wife, Marcus. This isn't business. It's an execution. Wife? Marcus blinked. Since when? Since the moment he touched her, Daniel said, and descended into the darkness. The descent into the belly of the Lady Vengeance felt like walking into a tomb. Above deck, the sounds of war were raging. The staccato rhythm of automatic gunfire, the shouting of men, the screaming of metal tearing against metal. But as Daniel Moretti descended the rusted iron staircase into the cargo hold, the noise of the world faded into a dull, rhythmic thrumming. It was the sound of the ocean pressing against the hull, a reminder that they were surrounded by freezing black water. Daniel's breathing was the loudest thing in his ears. His bespoke suit was ruined, torn at the shoulder and soaked with oil and seawater. But he didn't feel the cold. He felt a burning, white-hot terror that he had never experienced in his 32 years of life. He had faced federal indictments, assassination attempts, and boardroom betrayals without blinking. But the thought of Amelia, his quiet, brilliant, invisible Amelia, being in the hands of a butcher like Julian Thorne, made his hands tremble. He reached the bottom of the hold. The floor was flooded with 6 inches of stagnant, oily water that swirled around his ankles. The air smelled of brine, rust, and old fear. Julian! Daniel's voice was a roar that seemed to shake the rivets of the ship. I'm here! End this! For a long, agonizing moment, there was only silence. Then, a harsh floodlight snapped on at the far end of the cavernous space, blinding Daniel momentarily. When his eyes adjusted, the air left his lungs. 30 yards away, sitting on a rusted platform just above the waterline, was a solitary wooden chair. Emilia was bound to it with thick, coarse rope that cut into her grey wool sweater. Her hair, usually so neat, was matted with blood on the left side. Her glasses were gone, leaving her eyes vulnerable and blinking in the harsh light. Standing behind her, like a spectre of death, was Julian Thorne. He looked manic. His tactical vest was unzipped, his hair wild. One arm was hooked casually around Emilia's neck, choking her slightly, while his other hand pressed the cold steel barrel of a Sig Sauer against her temple. "I was wondering when you'd join the party, Daniel," Thorne called out, his voice echoing off the steel walls. "I must say, you look terrible. The distressed look doesn't suit you. It lacks authority." Daniel took a step forward, the water splashing loudly. "Let her go, Julian. You want my territory. Take it. You want the Jersey ports. Sign the papers. Just let her walk away." Thorne threw his head back and laughed, a jagged, hollow sound. "The ports? You think this is about shipping containers, Daniel? You arrogant prick. This is about showing the world that the great Daniel Moretti bleeds, just like the rest of us." Thorne tightened his grip on Emilia's neck. She gasped, her hands clawing uselessly at the ropes binding her wrists. "Look at her," Thorne spat, his voice dropping to a sinister whisper that carried across the water. "The little mouse. You kept her hidden for years. You walked past her every day and treated her like a piece of office equipment. And now you're wading through filth just to beg for her life. It's poetic." "I'm not begging," Daniel said, his voice dropping to a lethal calm. "I'm offering you a trade, my life for hers." Emilia's eyes widened. She shook her head frantically, a silent scream forming on her lips. "No." "A trade?" Thorne mused, tapping the gun against Emilia's skull. "Tempting. But I think I prefer a package deal. First, I'm going to put a bullet in her brain. I want you to watch the light go out of her eyes, Daniel. I want that to be the last thing you see before I send you to hell." Daniel froze. He was a marksman. He could draw the gun tucked in his waistband and fire in less than a second, but the distance was too great, and Thorne was using Emilia as a human shield. If he missed by an inch, Emilia died. He had to close the gap. "You want me to suffer?" Daniel asked, slowly raising his hands in surrender. "Then make me suffer. But do it up close. Don't hide behind a woman like a coward." Thorne's smile faltered. His ego was his trigger, and Daniel knew exactly how to pull it. "Drop your weapon," Thorne commanded. "Kick it into the water." Daniel reached behind his back. He pulled out his Beretta. He held it up for a second, letting the light catch the silver, then dropped it. It splashed into the murky water and vanished. "There," Daniel said. "Unarmed. Now on your knees," Thorne screamed, his composure cracking. "Kneel before me." Daniel slowly lowered himself. The freezing water soaked his knees, seeping into his trousers. He bowed his head, but his eyes remained locked on Emilia. He was looking for a sign. Anything. Emilia was terrified, but she wasn't broken. Behind the fear, Daniel saw the same sharp intelligence that had saved his company millions of dollars. She was watching Thorne. She could feel the tremor in his hand. She shifted her weight, her heels scraping against the metal platform. She locked eyes with Daniel. She didn't mouth "help me." She mouthed "ready." "Any last words, Mouse?" Thorne sneered, moving his finger to the trigger. Emilia took a deep breath. "Yes," she said, her voice raspy but clear. "You forgot to check the floorboards." Thorne frowned, confused. "What?" In that split second of confusion, Emilia threw her entire body weight backward. The rusted legs of the chair, already positioned precariously over a weak point in the platform she had identified, punched through the corroded metal. The chair tipped violently backward. Thorne, caught off guard and still holding her neck, lost his balance. He stumbled, the gun jerking upward as he fired a shot wildly into the ceiling. Bang! The sound was the starting pistol. Before the echo had even died, Daniel was moving. He didn't run. He exploded from the water. He covered the 30 yards with the speed of a desperate animal. Thorne was scrambling to regain his footing, trying to aim the gun at Daniel, but he was too slow. Daniel hit the platform, vaulting over the edge and tackling Thorne with the force of a freight train. They crashed into the metal wall, the impact knocking the breath out of both men. The gun skittered across the floor and fell into the dark water below. It was a brawl now. No weapons, just rage. Thorne was a street fighter, vicious and quick. He drove a knee into Daniel's ribs, hearing the crack of bone. Daniel grunted, but didn't let go. He grabbed Thorne by the lapels of his tactical vest and headbutted him, once, twice, 3 times. Blood sprayed across Daniel's face. Thorne's nose shattered. Thorne screamed and gouged at Daniel's eyes, his thumbs digging into the sockets. Daniel roared in pain, blinding white light flashing in his vision, but he converted the pain into power. He grabbed Thorne's wrists and twisted them back with a sickening crunch. He swept Thorne's legs, bringing him down to the hard metal grate. Daniel straddled him instantly, his hands finding Thorne's throat. "You touched her!" Daniel screamed, the veneer of the civilized businessman completely gone. "You put your hands on her!" Thorne gagged, his face turning purple, his hands clawing weakly at Daniel's forearms. He looked up into Daniel's eyes and saw no mercy. He saw only the abyss. "I saw her," Thorne wheezed. "You never saw her," Daniel whispered, leaning down until his lips were inches from the dying man's ear. "You only saw a pawn. I see the queen." Daniel squeezed. He didn't look away. He held on until the thrashing stopped. He held on until the light in Julian Thorne's eyes was extinguished, leaving nothing but an empty shell. Daniel released him. Thorne's body slumped against the metal grating, lifeless. For a moment, Daniel just knelt there, his chest heaving, his hands shaking violently from the adrenaline dump. The silence rushed back in, heavier than before. "Daniel." The voice was small, trembling. Daniel's head snapped up. Amelia was lying on her side, still tied to the overturned chair, watching him with wide, tear-filled eyes. He scrambled over to her, slipping on the wet metal. "I'm here. I'm here." He pulled a knife from his boot, the backup weapon he hadn't surrendered, and sliced through the thick ropes binding her wrists and ankles. As the ropes fell away, Amelia tried to sit up but collapsed forward. Daniel caught her. He pulled her into his lap, wrapping his arms around her so tightly it almost hurt. He buried his face in the crook of her neck, inhaling the scent of her skin beneath the grime and gunpowder. "You're alive," he sobbed, his body racking with dry heaves. "Oh God, Amelia. You're alive." Amelia clung to him, her fingers digging into the ruined fabric of his suit jacket. She felt the wetness of his tears on her neck. Tears from a man the world believed was incapable of feeling. "You came for me," she whispered, her voice breaking. I thought you'd just replace me. I thought I was just the archivist." Daniel pulled back, framing her bruised face with his bloodied hands. He looked at her with a fierce, terrifying intensity. "Replace you?" he choked out. "Amelia, look at me. Look at what I did. I destroyed half the city tonight. I broke every rule. I started a war I can't stop. All for you." He brushed a strand of dirty hair out of her eyes. "I didn't ignore you because you were invisible," he confessed, his voice raw. "I ignored you because I knew the moment I acknowledged you, I would belong to you. and I was terrified of that. But I'm not afraid anymore." Emilia looked at the man who had terrified her, employed her, and now saved her. She saw the monster. Yes, but she also saw the devotion. "Take me home, Daniel," she whispered. Daniel nodded. He stood up, lifting her effortlessly into his arms, as if she weighed nothing. He carried her through the rising water, past the body of his enemy, and up toward the light. 3 months later. The grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel was a sea of black tuxedos and designer silk. It was the annual Winter Gala, the most exclusive event of the New York underworld's social calendar. The air was thick with tension. Rumors had been swirling for months. The Thorn Syndicate had been dissolved, its territories absorbed by the Moretti family. But no one had seen Daniel Moretti since the night of the Port Massacre, and no one had seen the mysterious woman who was rumored to be the cause of it all. Suddenly, the heavy double doors swung open. The room went silent. The orchestra stopped playing. Daniel Moretti stepped into the room. He looked sharper, more dangerous than ever in a black velvet tuxedo. But he wasn't alone. And he wasn't walking in front of his entourage. He was walking arm in arm with a woman. The whispers started immediately. Was that the librarian? The mousy girl who used to carry his files? Emilia Vance, now Emilia Moretti, lifted her chin. She was no longer hiding behind grey wool or oversized glasses. She wore a gown of liquid gold silk that clung to her curves, a slit revealing a leg that ended in a stiletto heel sharp enough to kill. Her hair fell in cascading waves around her shoulders, and around her neck sat a diamond necklace so large it could have ransomed a small country. But the most striking thing wasn't the jewelry or the dress. It was her eyes. They scanned the room with a cold, calculating precision that mirrored Daniel's own. They stopped at the top of the stairs. Daniel turned to her, ignoring the hundreds of people staring at them. He took her hand, the left one, heavy with a massive sapphire ring, and brought it to his lips. "They're staring," Daniel murmured, a smirk playing on his lips. "Let them stare," Emilia replied, her voice steady and commanding. "I'm done being invisible." Daniel looked at her with pure, unadulterated worship. "You never were to me." He offered her his arm, and together the king and his queen descended the stairs, walking straight into the center of the room. The crowd parted like the Red Sea. No one dared to look away. No one dared to disrespect her. Because everyone knew the story. They knew that for this woman, Daniel Moretti had walked through hell, and if anyone dared to make her feel small again, he would happily burn the world down a second time. Emilia smiled, tight and dangerous, as she took her place at the head table. She was finally seen. And she liked the view. And that is how the mouse became the queen. Daniel Moretti learned the hard way that the most dangerous thing in his world wasn't a bullet or a rival boss. It was the woman sitting right in front of him. From invisible archivist to the only weakness of New York's most ruthless don, Emilia proved that sometimes you have to step out of the shadows to find the light. If this story had your heart racing, make sure to hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Did you like Emilia's transformation? Let me know in the comments below. And if you want more dark romance, mafia twists, and forbidden love stories, subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss a chapter. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.